welcome back to the Wellbeing Training Academy, where we explore practical psychology-based tools to help you to lead with more emotional intelligence, balance, and a good wellbeing ethos within your business. It's November, which means we're starting a new theme, and we're going to be focusing on communication and connection throughout November. So my name's Abby Twomlow. I'm a psychologist and wellbeing practitioner and trainer within business.
Hi, and I'm Andrew Farquharson, and I'm all of those things that Abby mentioned. Well, nearly all.
So, today we're going to be talking about a skill that is so simple and yet it's so underrated and so underused, isn't it? Which is something called active listening. Because in leadership, it's not your title or your status that earns you trust within your business, it's how well you can listen. So, I suppose we need to talk about what it is and why it matters, really. So, do you want to get us started, Andrew?
Well, yeah, okay. Just listening is really important. Now, you may think, well, I listen all the time. When people tell me things, I'm listening and so on. But there's basically five stages of listening in the process. And we'll come to the active listening bit in a minute. There's remembering, and there's receiving, and there's responding. Um, and understanding and evaluating. They're all actions that happen during listening. And some of those activities are not necessarily very good for listening, i.e., active listening. And active listening is basically taking in what the other person is saying and you're listening to understand, not listening to sort of dive in with what your thoughts are or want to show that you know more than on something than anybody else or anything like that, because actually you're not listening. Also, how many people have you been with in a sort of social setting when you're talking to them and they're maybe gazing somewhere else, usually on gazing at their phone, and how much listening is going on there? So this idea of active listening is really important, and it's particularly important in nurturing a culture of well-being, emotional intelligence, great leadership, and employee well-being at obviously at work.
Yeah,
So
because it's not the same as hearing, is it? We all hear, but active listening is about being fully present with the person in front of you, being fully engaged with that person. So it's not about just waiting for your turn to speak. It's really tuning into what somebody is saying and actually what they're not saying as well. It's about recognizing the unsaid, isn't it? How things have been said, tone, facial expressions, body language. And, the research tells us that when people feel truly listened to, their stress levels drop, their brains create more oxytocin. That's like that connection and happy hormone. And from a business perspective, that increases trust and reduces conflict and it makes people feel more engaged. So it's a real performance driver. If you're a really good listener, it's one of the fastest ways to show your staff respect um, and show people that they're valued as well. Because if you're just constantly hearing what people are saying and you're just constantly waiting to react rather than sort of respond and sometimes just for the sake of listening and understanding, if you're just reacting all the time, then that person feels constantly put down or undervalued or that they're not being heard properly. So it's a really important skill, isn't it?
yes, it is. So let's have a look and see what active listening looks like in practice. Um, how can you break it down? Well, you could say there's three levels of it. There's internal listening, and that is what your attention is still on. You're hearing the other person. It's a bit like you were saying, hearing as opposed to listening, but also thinking, how does that affect me? What should I say next? And it's more a sort of where most conversations sort of live, but it's really sort of like a superficial surface level. next one you could call focused listening. And this shifts your attention to them being the other person in the conversation. You're genuinely interested. You're picking up on their words, their tone, their pace. You're listening to understand, not reply. And I'll repeat that again. You're listening to understand, not reply. And then perhaps you could say the third level is global listening. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in. And as you mentioned earlier, Abby, about the body language, you're actually noticing body language, what is not being said, perhaps the underlying emotion of what's actually coming out. And you're paying attention to the feeling in the space. So it's not just words, you could say it's the whole package. And so leaders who have a good understanding of active listening can move between these levels, internal and focused and global, are the ones that you naturally trust and follow. And like you said, this helps to boost your own well-being through all the various hormones and so on flowing around your body. And ultimately it boosts things like productivity and so on.
Yeah, because listening isn't just about focusing on somebody and being silent either, is it? It's not about just sort of looking at somebody and staring at them and hear listening to what they're saying and absorbing it all. It's a bit of a two-way street, isn't it? And it's an active engagement because excuse me, but when somebody is really listening to you, and think about the last time that you felt listened to, how do you know that you were being listened to? You know, that person's giving you eye contact. They might be giving you sort of small verbal nudges like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, or tell me a bit more about that. Or maybe it's their body language. Are they sitting forward? Are they watching your face? Are they engaged, or are they staring at their phone, looking out the window, or blinking and looking up because that normally indicates they're thinking about something else. So it's about picking up on all of those things. Also, if somebody's listening to you and really listening to you through active listening, they tend to sort of summarize what you've said. So, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're feeling a bit under pressure because the deadlines keep shifting. Have I got that right? And that last bit, that, have I got that right, is golden in leadership because it tells people that you're not assuming that you know what they said and you've understood. You're actually checking. You show that you care about getting it right for them by checking.
As you say, summarizing, because then the person does feel heard because they're not only experiencing you there in a physical sense, concentrating, listening, whatever it might be, but they also know that you actually listen because you've asked the sort of confirmation question. Is that right, what you're saying? Etc. So that's a real boost. So what impact do you think this would have on office culture, a team's culture, the way that people respond to each other in a team? When leaders actively listen, they don't just improve one conversation, they shift the whole culture because then other people start to do it as well. And those that don't, there's a sort of spotlight in a sense on them because you know it readily. You're not actually listening to me or you're not listening to understand. How it might play out in real workplaces is teams, groups, employees start to problem solved in a positive way, not trying to solve a problem by blaming people. People then are open to expressing ideas and thoughts much earlier in the process. And it doesn't matter if it's a sort of bit of an out there sort of thought, they're willing to put it there because they feel that they'll be listened to, they can discuss it, and without a sort of sense of fear or blame. And it can move these things into small issues, into big big thoughts. And all the employees can feel seen and heard. It also makes difficult conversations easier. When someone knows that you're truly listening, you're much less defensive, you're more open, and you're much more likely to collaborate. And in emotional intelligence leadership, that's the heart of well-being. If you're an emotionally intelligent leader, you're getting to the heart of the well-being of the whole group. Because a culture of listening creates psychological safety. And that's where creativity and trust and innovation grow. So it's
And
a win-win.
we touched on that, didn't we, a couple of sessions ago? We looked at
Yeah.
psychological safety and the impact. And I think a really big part of creating that psychological safety is through leadership that listens and actively listens. And I think, like I said right at the start, it's something that's really underused and underrated in a lot of businesses. Well, actually, I'm the manager. This is how I want it done. People just need to get on with it and do as they're told. And that's where you've lost your team, really. That's where you've lost it. And they'll be, their motivation will drain quite quickly. They'll look for better opportunities. So let's have a quick sort of self-check. Let's make it a bit more practical. So I kind of want you as a listener, not you, Andrew, you
I'm
as
not
a
listening.
to do a sort of self-audit, if you like. And next time that you're in a meeting or a one-to-one situation with somebody and you're having a conversation, I want you to start noticing these three things. Number one, where is your attention? Are you listening to respond? Are you waiting to sort of get in there and answer? Or are you trying to understand what that person is saying? What's their body language telling you? Do they seem tense, withdrawn, energized? It's that simple thing. When you ask somebody if they're okay and you know that they're not, and they go, yeah, I'm fine. There's a whole load of other signals going on with their face, their tone, their body that is telling you something different. So, what is this person's body language telling you in this situation, in this discussion that you're having? And what are you doing that shows that you're listening? Are you asking questions that show that you're curious? Are you reflecting back? Are you pausing? So just try focusing on just one person today, whether it's in a meeting, it might be a colleague, a team member, even a friend, or one of your children, or your wife or your husband, one person, and give them your full attention for 60 seconds longer than you normally would. Doesn't sound like much time, but actually a lot can happen within 60 seconds, and you will be totally amazed at what you notice and what can shift within that extra time. And just keep those points in mind. So, where's your attention? What are you doing that shows that you're listening? And is there anything else that's going on in that conversation that's not being said? I
I'm doing
suppose
the
that
60
brings us.
second.
Oh, that was your exercise. Oh, well done. I cut you short. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was listening, but that was it. Extra 60 seconds. No,
Look, I suppose that kind of brings us quite nicely to a conclusion there, that self-reflection, doesn't it? So, just to kind of summarize, because that's what we've touched on as well, but this is what we want you to take away from today. Listening is leadership in action. It's an absolute superpower if you do it well. And it can be the thing that makes the biggest difference in your business because it builds trust faster than authority ever can. And it's something that you can improve every day. It's something that you can work on for free every day without a huge amount of effort. It's just being consciously aware, isn't it? Because the most emotionally intelligent leaders aren't the loudest in the room. They're not the bossiest. They're not even the most highly qualified a lot of the time. They're the ones who create space and time for other people to be heard. Um, so yeah, this week we challenge you to try and use your listening skills as your leadership superpower and notice what difference it makes. Notice how your team respond to it, how your conversations change, and maybe you might even feel different in yourself. You never know.
that's right. And just to remind you of two things you can ask yourself next time you're going into a meeting or on a one-to-one is, where's my attention? And am I listening to respond or to understand? We'll wrap up there, as Abby says, and we look forward to speaking to you next time. So I'll say bye-bye.
And I'll just say, if you found today helpful, please share it with a colleague or connect with us at the wellbeingtrainingacademy.com. And there's lots more psychology-based leaderships and more podcasts, obviously on YouTube as well. But until next time, keep up the good work, keep improving your emotional intelligence, and you never know what you might hear when you listen a bit more carefully. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.